Do you remember when in the mid 90s it suddenly felt like the Beatles were alive again? Not as a reunion tour, not as a headline, but as a story unfolding on TV, on CDs, in living rooms, like we were rediscovering them in real time. 1995 had a very particular feeling. Music was everywhere, but the way we found music was still physical. CD towers at home, cassette Walkmans still in pockets, VHS tapes rented for the weekend, music TV in the background while you did other things. In the UK and Europe, you'd catch bands and performances on shows like Top of the Pops or music blogs on commercial TV. In many countries, including across Eastern Europe and the former Soviet space, music culture was a mix of local radio, import CDs, tape trading, and satellite TV slowly expanding what people could watch. And then, right in the middle of the decade, the Beatles returned in a format that made perfect sense for 1995, a documentary event, a long form archive, a time machine. That was the Beatles Anthology, broadcast in late 1995. The Anthology project wasn't just one thing, it was a whole universe. A major TV documentary series telling the Beatles' story with rare footage and fresh reflections from the surviving members. 3 compilation albums, Anthology 1, 2, and 3, packed with outtakes, demos, alternate takes, the behind the curtain Beatles, and a big cultural moment that made people talk about the Beatles again like it was present tense. And what made it hit differently from earlier retrospectives is this. It wasn't just here's the past. It was here's the past with something newly made inside it. Because Anthology included 2 new Beatles songs built around John Lennon home demos. Free as a Bird and Real Love. That's the moment many people remember as, wait, the Beatles just released a new song? And one of the most powerful Anthology images is simple. Paul, George, and Ringo in a room again. Not in 1965, in the mid-90s, older, calmer, with history behind them. They weren't trying to recreate Beatlemania. They were trying to do something more delicate, to take John's rough cassettes demos recorded years after the band ended and build respectful arrangement around them. This is where the tone matters. These sessions weren't about perfection. They were about presence. And there's a small detail that says everything about how sensitive the moment was. For at least part of the filming approach, the idea was to capture it in a fly-on-the-wall way, so they didn't feel like they were performing for cameras while working. Free as a Bird was released as a Beatles single in late 1995 and is explicitly described as a Lennon demo completed by the remaining Beatles decades after the breakup, produced by Chef Lynne. The creative challenge was enormous. John's demo was a lo-fi home recording, tempo drift, tape noise, limited separation. And yet the final track had to feel like a Beatles record, without faking it. So the solution was partly musical, arrangement choices, and partly technical, cleaning up the demo as much as possible with the tools available then. Then we have Real Love, that was similarly completed from a Lennon demo and released as a Beatles single in 1996, with the Anthology sessions and production credits pointing again to Chef Lynne in the Beatles version. Even if you didn't know the technical story, you could feel the emotional story. Three friends building a frame around a fourth friend's voice. If you enjoy this kind of deep listening and reflection, join us live every week with the 90s Lover Show on Fridays and with the 80s Lover Show on Saturdays, both live at 7 p.m. Eastern on our YouTube and Kick channels. I first start the YouTube live stream for around 10 minutes just to allow people some time to gather as a kind of waiting room, and then we continue the full show live stream on Kick, where we can play full music, video clips with no restrictions. I share the link to Kick for you all to move there. And on Kick is where things really come alive, with the 4 show segments, your song requests, live voting, your voice messages on air, and even phone calls to share memories, stories, and reflections connected to the music and life. You can participate or simply listen, and if you feel like participating, you can do it on the Kick's live stream chat or by leaving comments on the main post of our public Facebook group, which allows more space to write. Join our public group on Facebook by searching for RetroLovers Radio 80s and 90s Nostalgia. Make sure also to subscribe on YouTube and turn on the notification bell. And keep an eye on all the 6 extra monthly special shows as well. Now we get to a part of the story that ties 1995 to 2023. During the Anthology era, there was a third Lennon demo considered for the same treatment, called Now and Then. They attempted it in the 90s, but it got shelved. And why? Because the demo had technical problems that were simply too hard to solve at that time. Loud noise and hum, the piano bleeding into everything, and overall audio quality issues that made a clean lead vocal extraction extremely difficult. And artistically, it also needed full agreement, and the project didn't have it. So the third song became the unfinished chapter, until technology finally caught up. In 2023, Now and Then was completed and released, widely described as the final Beatles song. The key breakthrough wasn't making a fake John Lennon voice. It was using modern machine learning audio tools built during Peter Jackson's Get Back restoration work to separate John's voice more cleanly from the old demo, something that wasn't achievable to the needed standard in the mid-90s. And the 2023 release didn't erase the 90s attempt. It used it. It incorporated George Harrison's guitar parts recorded during the 1995 sessions, and it was finished with the new work by Paul and Ringo, plus modern production finishing touches. So the Anthology era wasn't just nostalgia, it was the foundation. 1995 planted the seed. 2023 let it bloom. Anthology didn't just remind people the Beatles were great. It taught a different kind of listening. You could hear takes and mistakes. You could hear the band becoming the band. You could hear history as a process, not a statue. And for a lot of people in the 90s, whether you were in the UK, the US, across Europe, or anywhere else, it created a shared experience. Families watching together, friends talking about it the next day, people buying CDs not just for hits, but for deep cuts and alternate versions. It was the Beatles, rediscovered as living craft. What I love about the anthology story is this. It proves that time doesn't only take things away. Sometimes time gives something back. When the right hands, the right care, and the right tools finally meet the moment. And that's the quiet message behind Anthology, and behind Now and Then. Some voices never really disappear, they just wait until we can hear them clearly again. Do you remember your first Anthology memory? Were you watching the documentary on TV? Did you buy Anthology 1 the week it came out? Did Free as a Bird feel surreal the first time you heard it? And what did you feel when Now and Then finally arrived in 2023, after decades of being the unfinished one? Please tell me where you were and what that time in your life felt like in the comment section. So, do you remember now? This music gave you joy. Now let this moment receive that feeling. Alright, everyone. Thank you so much for being here in another episode. See you all in the next one. I'm Mick, and this was RetroLovers Radio.